When most people think of World War II, they picture tanks, battles and uniforms. What often gets overlooked is the fight that took place every single day between soldiers and hunger. Winter was especially brutal. Frozen supply lines, blockaded cities, and starving armies created conditions where food was as much a weapon as any rifle. Yet in these desperate months, soldiers learned tricks, small, clever food hacks that kept them alive. Some of these methods are forgotten today, but they reveal the ingenuity and grit of men pushed to the edge. And for survivalists or history buffs, they offer practical lessons in stretching rations and using whatever is at hand when conditions turn harsh. Soldiers relied on melting frozen rations to make them edible. In places like Stalingrad or Bastogne, supplies often froze solid. Soldiers learned to thaw bread, meat or canned goods by holding them under clothing or over the smallest fire. Sometimes frozen bread was chipped into fragments with bayonets and soaked in water to make it chewable. The modern takeaway is simple. Frozen food is still food. Warming it slowly against body heat or in small amounts of water conserves fuel and avoids waste. When caught outdoors in winter, thawing before cooking can save resources just as it did for soldiers 70 years ago. They stretched rations by turning crumbs into soup. Crumbled biscuits, stale bread, or even flour scraps were often boiled into broth. This made the food easier to eat, provided warmth, and stretched a small amount into a filling meal. German troops on the Eastern Front turned army bread into watery soups, while American GIs poured hot water over hard crackers to soften them. For survival, this really shows the power of improvisation. Even crumbs, you know, can be turned into something filling when they're combined with water and heat. Creating soups also keeps the body hydrated, which is just as critical as getting enough calories. Soldiers used fat as both food and fuel. Fat was absolutely treasured during those winter campaigns. It burned well, but it also carried dense calories. Soviet soldiers sometimes scraped animal fat or lard into soups, while Germans boiled horse meat and saved the grease. A spoonful of fat added to thin soup provided enough energy to keep moving in the cold. In survival today, carrying high-fat foods like nuts, lard or even butter is really wise. They deliver more energy per gram than almost anything else, and, well, they can double as emergency fuel for fire starting. They improvised coffee and tea substitutes. Caffeine was, well, pretty scarce, but morale really depended on warm drinks. Soldiers would roast acorns, barley, or even chicory roots to create substitutes for coffee. In occupied Europe, civilians actually shared these tricks with troops. British soldiers sometimes boiled pine needles for a vitamin-rich tea, you know, to fight off scurvy. For modern survivalists, this is a reminder that hot drinks boost morale and warmth, even if they aren't traditional coffee. Learning a few substitutes, like pine needle tea, can provide comfort and, honestly, some essential vitamins in a pinch. They relied on scavenging local food whenever possible. No matter the uniform, soldiers often turned to local sources: frozen potatoes from abandoned farms, foraged berries, or wild game when it could be caught. German troops on long retreats often survived by raiding cellars, while Allied soldiers occasionally hunted rabbits or pheasants near villages. For survival today, knowing basic foraging skills remains invaluable. Being able to identify edible roots, berries, or small game ensures that rations are not the only lifeline. The Second World War proved that blending issued food with scavenged food kept men alive through shortages. They learned to eat every part of an animal. Horsemeat, once taboo, became common in besieged cities. Soldiers boiled bones for broth, roasted marrow, and even boiled hides or belts made of animal leather to extract nutrients. Nothing was wasted. The modern application is the principle of zero waste. If forced into survival, broth from bones, organs or scraps carries more nutrition than just meat alone. A resourceful soldier saw calories where others saw refuse. Soldiers preserved food by freezing it in snow. Ironically, the freezing cold also acted as storage. Soviet units buried food in snowbanks to keep it safe from spoilage or rodents. Even when meat was scarce, this practice ensured what they had lasted longer without rotting. Today, winter survivalists can use snow or ice to create natural refrigeration. Properly sealed, it can extend the life of perishable food far longer than leaving it exposed. They turned meagre sugar rations into morale boosters. Sugar was rationed tightly, but soldiers used it carefully. Stirring a spoon into weak coffee or sprinkling over stale bread lifted spirits. Small sweets were traded like treasure, offering both energy and comfort in grim conditions. You know, the modern takeaway here is not to underestimate morale food. In a survival pack, just a small amount of candy, chocolate or sugar, well, it doesn't just provide fast energy, it can really lift your spirits when things get tough. Soldiers, they knew that morale often kept men moving just as much as calories did. Soldiers, they boiled everything to make it safe and filling. From questionable water to scavenged potatoes, boiling was honestly the universal trick. It killed bacteria, softened tough foods, and helped extract the maximum nutrition. German and Soviet units alike, they boiled anything edible into thin stews, stretching supplies and ensuring safety. For survivalists today, boiling still remains one of the most practical cooking methods out there. With just a pot and a bit of fire, nearly anything edible can be made safer and easier to digest. It was the frontline solution back then, and really it still holds true. They rationed with military discipline. Perhaps the most important hack of all was strict rationing. Soldiers divided portions carefully, even when hunger gnawed at them. Eating everything at once meant weakness later. Discipline in consuming small amounts steadily was often what kept them alive through long winters. For today, rationing is a survival skill on its own. Stretching supplies, no matter how little, ensures endurance. The greatest tool World War II soldiers carried was not just their kit, but their willpower to make food last. The food hacks of World War II soldiers remind us that survival is not about abundance, but ingenuity. Men in frozen trenches and besieged cities lived on scraps, substitutes and discipline, yet they endured some of the harshest winters in history. These lessons remain timeless. Whether you are studying history or preparing for survival, the creativity of those soldiers shows that even in the bleakest conditions, resourcefulness feeds both the body and the spirit. If you found value in uncovering these forgotten food hacks and want to learn more about how soldiers of the past survived against impossible odds, subscribe to the channel and share this video so more people can keep these lessons alive.